Here we go.
Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well, you amazing, beautiful, wonderful people. This is video 3 of 3. That's it. We did the live this morning. If you didn't check it out, go and check it out. And then we did a little one in the middle. Something a little bit different. Spoke about Squid Games. And is Squid Game actually based on a true story? There seems to be stories going like wildfire, like hotcakes, like donuts, saying it's real. But we dug into that a little bit. But this one, we are heading back to Moscow, Idaho. As I did say, that over the next few weeks, as we head towards Trialville, we will be speaking on the Idaho 4 case and just trying to go back into some of the things that we know, what we've been told, and seeing how that factors in the case against Bryan Kohberger. And have we got information, evidence that there is more to this case than meets the eye? But is it only the eagle-eyed that will indeed see it and take notice? And you know that I am not alone. I have my man Ed with his laser focus. And he has been going through the information with a fine-tooth comb to bring us things to take into consideration with respect of this case, as Moscow, Idaho tried to kill Bryan Kohberger for this crime. But anyway, this is what we're talking about this morning. And it is this, right? So is the strategy of the prosecution to place Kohberger a good distance away from the house because this was his car on Linda Lane? In fact, he was at the residence. What we're basically saying here is obviously for people who are paying attention, the documentation is stipulating that Bryan Kohberger was in the vicinity of a tower that serviced the 1122 King Road property. So that is not saying that Bryan Kohberger was at the 1122 King Road property. They're saying that he's in the vicinity of, or immediate vicinity of, a tower that serviced it. So that's actually placing Bryan Kohberger away from the property, not at the property. So stick a pin in it. Yes, it's a possibility because they knew he was innocent and he may be an actual witness and was never a suspect. So people have spoken about Bryan Kohberger and why Bryan Kohberger? Why has he been fingered? I don't mean, like I've said before, behind bike sheds. I mean fingered as in by the law, and that is he's the man. He's the one who did this crime. You know, do they know that he was in the area, but they know that he didn't do the crime itself? Who knows? As a result of the alleged fight, let's assume, and we're going back to the Frat fight here, and I know the Frat situation isn't everybody's on the top of their agenda. Some people are going down the rabbit hole of the D-rugs, and, you know, all I'm saying is I am not fully invested in that yet. I see that there's stuff on the peripheral of it, but I just feel that it would be a very, very different crime if it was to do with D-rugs. I feel that the methodology of the crime even would be different. And I think that if we was talking about cartels, for instance, I don't think anybody in that house would have survived this attack whatsoever. I think it would have been an absolute whitewash, and everybody inside those four walls would have gone. That's just my thought process. And again, I don't really see the evidence when you factor in how these kind of cartel hits and all that have happened previously. They don't tend to go into houses that are on school campuses and do it in this fashion. Maybe it's an outlier. Who knows? I'm not taking it 100% off the table. I'm just saying that it's not the top of my theory. And when you factor in that we do have a $750 million, so nearly $1 billion deal with the acquisition of the Phoenix University by the University of Idaho, we have evidence that there was indeed a fight on the college campus on the night of these crimes. And we also have a lot of police presence in the area. And again, stick a pin in it, because we're going to take into consideration some of the nuances of what was said around this case and how that factors into this. So it says, this may very be why there were no calls, or why no calls were made, or intercepted by police, knowing police assistance and any frat management involved led to no arrests, which may have prevented the deaths of the 4. So what we're basically saying, we know that there was 4 victims, but do we know that they were killed instantaneously, that there wasn't any way that anybody could have been saved in this crime? And I know it's a macabre thing to think about, but we just don't know that. We don't have the answers. We don't know if people took a while to expire. Let's say that. So look, here is the liability factor, which we've mentioned previously. The fight was initiated at the frat party and it ended at the King Road house. So what we're saying is the fight that we have been told happened, there was concerns about it. Parents were even looking to come over and check. So this fight happened. We've also got statements from Steve Gonsalves seemingly suggesting that whatever happened, they didn't have to go upstairs, and we can read into that as much as we like, but it could have simply meant that he felt that the targets were downstairs. So whoever did this, they didn't necessarily need to go up into the property and execute 2 further people in the house, because they were not part of the initial issue. But what happened in that house, they have to push a certain narrative. They trying very hard to push this, they were asleep, so this was done in people's sleep. When in fact, I don't think that was. And they have to do that because they almost have to make it look like Dylan and Bethany couldn't have heard anything. There was no reason for them to hear anything, because this was someone sneaking in and sneakily going about and executing people in the house, when in fact we know that this crime happened very differently. And even though we don't think that the house should have been knocked down, the fact that it was knocked down shows you just how much it's very likely that sound would have been carried through that property. Could somebody have really gone into that house and done this crime without anybody hearing what was going on? Steve Gonsalves again states that there was one hell of a fight. There was one hell of a fight, but it was like a silent movie. Massive fight, hell of a fight, but no sound. Read into that as you will. So there is a fight. It's initiated at the frat party, but it spills over into the King Road house. Those who may have reservations of this scenario or don't think it's plausible are then faced or questioned, which was and is, why police didn't receive any call until noon, which has always been the sticky wicket here. Why did it take so long for law enforcement to be called? You have to contemplate that. Whether you believe Bryan Kohberger did this crime or not, you have to admit that the delay in calling law enforcement factors in with this fraternity and sorority mentality of enclosure. When there is something that happens, they try and hold it in and deal with it themselves. And did it just get to the point where they had no choice, or was there something else going on in the background? The Moscow Police Department and college officials knew, due to the fight at the party and no arrest made, which was on college property, were well aware of and included the liability issue. So what we're basically saying, we know there was a lot of presence of law enforcement around this area. We've all seen the Banfield footage. There was people running about in the background of the Banfield footage. We've seen it with our own eyes. So were Moscow Police Department aware of this fight? Are they aware? When it was so bad, apparently, that people were being called, parents were being called, and parents were contemplating coming back from Pullman over to Moscow, Idaho. Do you know what I mean? And the only reason they didn't is because Jeff had been drinking. So would it be fair to assume that the Moscow Police Department had already been informed that there was a fight, there was an escalation, there was something happening? And how would that look had it been that indeed had spiraled out of control and led to the death of 4 individuals at 1122 King Road? There is a huge liability issue there for both the University of Idaho and Moscow Police Department. And let's not forget that just a snippet, a segment of what someone said when they entered that house was apparently, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you. Who would even be able to say that? If they're seen by someone, that sounds to me like an EMT. It's an emergency services person, a cop or someone who they're, as soon as they arrive at the scene of something, don't worry, I'm here to help you. So there's these little things. The devil in the detail would lead you to believe that there's a possibility that whoever entered that house was indeed law enforcement. Is the entire time frame being shifted? Now, even Bryan Kohberger's legal representative, Ann Taylor, had turned around and said that her client was not in the area that this crime happened at the time they are saying the crime happened. Again, the devil is in the detail. Listen to what she is saying. She's not saying that Bryan Kohberger wasn't there. She is saying that Bryan Kohberger wasn't in this area at the time of the crime. So that the time that the prosecution and law enforcement are suggesting this crime happened is not the time that he was there. So was Bryan Kohberger indeed there, but at a different time, which factors into what Eddie is saying here. Did Bryan Kohberger witness something? Did Bryan Kohberger witness something? And did Bethany Funk indeed witness Bryan Kohberger, but away from the property? We have to consider that. So look, regardless whether the police had any knowledge beforehand and were not called, the problem remains, which was the incident began in a building associated with the college. Therefore, any negligence by Moscow Police Department or Frat management due to not calling Moscow Police Department, we have three factors to evaluate. That is liability, that is negligence, and a basis for Moscow Police Department and the college's attempts cover up their proportion of liability and negligence. So these are three things you have to consider. We have put into place here a scenario that we have evidence of, and I'm not saying this is exactly how things happened, but you have to consider everything. Again, we're saying if Bryan Kohberger didn't do this crime, someone else did this crime. What do we know? What have we been told? What are the little details that we may or may not have missed? And what could they mean if indeed we push them to the forefront of our mind and give them the time of day that they deserve? Moscow Police Department and the Idaho State Police and the FBI interrogated Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk. So if either were found to be co-accessory, accessory to, or co-conspiring to commit murder, either or both would have been arrested, booked, and charged as co-defendants. They are witnesses, not co-defendants. Do they have knowledge of the attack and the time thereof? Yes, they do, and there is substantial evidence to support this is true. But it could be that the entire time frame has been shifted. Could be, or there is other things going on that they know, and are they being leveraged upon? Again, we have an 8-hour time delay, and we have considered that they could have potentially been, leaned on and perhaps threatened. They are witnesses, not co-defendants. They are witnesses, so because they were residents doesn't indicate they were involved but had knowledge of the attack. Wake up, big pooch. It says, knowing Moscow Police Department, State Police, and the FBI were involved in the interrogation of Mortensen and Funk and the excessive amount of brutality of the attack, if either were a co-accessory, accessory to, or guilty of conspiring to commit the murders, it is certain either or both would have been arrested, booked, and charged with, and by association. We know there is ample evidence Mortensen and Funk are witnesses, not co-conspirators, because they were in the house does not insist, nor is there evidence they were involved in any way. They are not jailed as co-defendants awaiting trial. They are witnesses. Do they have knowledge of the attack? Yes. Again, There is ample evidence both do have knowledge of the attack and the time of it. Take it in, take it in, take it in. So look, there is a lot happening. There is a lot happening around the Idaho 4 case. There are many, many things to think about, many, many things to consider. There are so many things that could have potentially happened around this. But all we have to really think is the person who's being accused of this crime, is he the person who did the crime? Do you believe truly that Bryan Kohberger, this university student from Washington, well, from Pennsylvania, but you know what I mean, he was studying in Washington, he just happened to one night to decide to head over to this house, walk into this house and do this crime with absolutely no connection to, no stalking, but again, so many things being pushed out to try and get you to feel a certain way about the accused. But most of the stuff that's being said is unfounded. It is baseless. He could have done it. He could have done it. But what I'm asking people to do is have an open mind, to slow down, to look into everything, to take into consideration everything that has been given to you that you may not have considered previously, or you've simply overlooked it. Again, the devil is in the detail. Love you all, and I will catch you all tomorrow. Mwah.